Your wife is a parasite. My mother-in-law said those words to my husband during our engagement party. Not in a private corner, not in a hushed aside. She said them at the dessert table, loud enough that 3 couples turned to stare. Marcus didn't correct her. He laughed. That was 12 years ago. For the next decade, his family would call me a gold digger at Christmas dinners, a leech at birthday parties, a social climber when I suggested we couldn't afford to subsidize their lifestyle anymore. Last month, my divorce lawyer handed me a forensic accounting report. 147 pages proving I had been the only consistent earner in our marriage. That I had paid for everything. Our mortgage, our cars, our vacations, our children's private school tuition. That I had wired over $180,000 to Marcus's parents to prevent foreclosure on their home. The same home where his mother had once looked me in the eye and called me a financial burden. That analysis didn't merely exonerate me. It obliterated the entire fabricated narrative Marcus's relatives had constructed around their supposed affluence. But I'm jumping ahead. Let me return to the start, so you grasp how a woman becomes accused of plundering wealth she actually generated. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Elena Tells Stories. But only do this if you genuinely connect with what you're hearing. I share these stories because I know someone out there needs to hear they're not alone. Drop your age, location, and the time you're watching in the comments. I love knowing who's part of this community. Now, let me explain how I spent over a decade financing the very individuals who spent that same period branding me a thief. I encountered Marcus when I was 28, employed as a lead data analyst at a Seattle technology startup. My annual compensation was I maintained my own Capitol Hill residence, contributed to retirement savings, and carried no obligations beyond SEZ's reasonable vehicle loan. By any rational standard, I was economically self-sufficient and secure. Marcus was 31, working in what he called client relations for his father's advisory firm. I phrase it that way because I eventually discovered client relations meant appearing at business lunches and mingling at industry events while his father managed all substantive operations. Marcus earned $65,000 annually, yet conducted himself as though his income tripled that figure. He operated a leased luxury sedan. He dressed in designer clothing. He selected restaurants where starters alone commanded $40 price tags. I naturally assumed, in that trusting way you assume things about someone capturing your heart, that he possessed inherited wealth. Technically, he did. His parents occupied a sprawling Bellevue property overlooking Lake Washington. His mother displayed high-end accessories. His father maintained country club privileges. What I didn't realize, because nobody disclosed it and I never thought to investigate, was that the property had been refinanced multiple times, that the jewelry was credit purchased, that the membership fees were months overdue. The Whitmore clan didn't possess actual wealth. They possessed the illusion of wealth, which constitutes a vastly different and considerably more expensive thing to sustain. But I learned none of this until after our wedding. Our engagement unfolded as 6 months of calculated insults masquerading as family concern. Marcus's mother, Patricia, invited me to lunch at an upscale waterfront establishment 2 weeks following his proposal. She ordered a salad and white wine. She inquired about my background. My father had been a mail carrier, my mother a public school librarian, both now, retired in a comfortable Portland suburb. She responded with the expression people adopt when performing courtesy. "How admirable that you've worked diligently to improve your circumstances," she said. That word, improve, lingered like a medical diagnosis. Marcus has always been charitable toward people from alternative circumstances. Alternative circumstances, as though I'd immigrated from some separate economic territory. She questioned me about my profession. I described my position at the startup. I supervised an analytics team, developed predictive frameworks for customer retention, collaborated directly with senior leadership on planning initiatives. She nodded again. "That's quite nice, dear, though you'll likely want to reduce your commitment once you and Marcus begin raising children. Children need an available mother, not someone consumed by professional demands." I should have recognized it then. How she characterized my career as temporary diversion. How she presumed I would be the one sacrificing, never Marcus. How she addressed me like a complication she was attempting to resolve diplomatically. But I wanted her approval. I wanted to believe I was joining a nurturing, accepting family who would embrace me. So I smiled and offered something vague about handling decisions as they arose. Marcus's father, Richard, deployed less subtlety. He pulled Marcus aside during a family cookout and stated, audibly enough that I overheard through the glass door, that he hoped Marcus had arranged proper legal protections. "You've built significant assets," Richard said. "You don't want someone claiming half during a split." Marcus dismissed it casually. "Dad, seriously, Ava isn't that kind of person." But he didn't counter with, "Actually, Dad, Ava earns substantially more than I do." He didn't state, "She's the financially responsible one here." He simply redirected and moved on. I should have demanded complete financial transparency before marriage. I should have posed difficult questions about his earnings, his reserves, his obligations. But I was in love, and I confused his self-assurance with actual capability. He projected the bearing of someone managing life successfully. He discussed investment approaches and economic patterns. He employed terminology like cash flow optimization and portfolio balance. I presumed he understood what he was doing. We married in August at a Woodinville vineyard. Patricia insisted on accommodating 200 guests, most unknown to me. She insisted on live music, multiple dinner courses, and premium liquor selections. The celebration cost $78,000. Marcus's parents contributed $5,000. I funded the remainder. I depleted my savings completely. I liquidated a portion of my retirement account, absorbing the penalty. I charged $15,000 because Patricia convinced me that economizing would humiliate the family. "People remember shabby celebrations," she said. "You only receive one opportunity to establish this impression." I convinced myself this was an investment in our future, in our shared journey, in the family I was entering. Marcus and I didn't address finances seriously until 3 months post-wedding. We were sitting in our apartment, my apartment technically, since I'd resided there 2 years before Marcus relocated, after the honeymoon. He was absorbed in his phone. I was examining our shared account on my computer. "Marcus," I said, "did you transfer your rent portion this month?" He glanced upward. "I thought you were managing it." "I paid my half. We agreed on $1,200 each." "Right, absolutely. I'll handle it tomorrow." Tomorrow transformed into next week. Next week stretched into 2 weeks. After 30 days, I covered the full amount myself because I refused to risk eviction over his oversight. That established the pattern. I would request Marcus contribute his share of some expense, utilities, food, vehicle coverage. He would consent. He would neglect it. I would pay it myself to prevent complications. Initially, I rationalized it as temporary transition period. He was still adjusting to married existence. He was occupied professionally. He was managing family pressures. I told myself things would eventually stabilize. They never stabilized. 6 months into marriage, Marcus arrived home announcing his father's advisory firm was faltering. Clients had vanished. Income had dropped 40%. Richard might need to dissolve the business. "He's considering selling the property," Marcus said. He appeared genuinely troubled. "My mom is distraught. They've lived there 25 years. I experienced genuine sympathy. I understood watching parents struggle financially. I asked how we could assist. "Could we loan them some funds?" Marcus asked. "Just to sustain them temporarily until Dad secures new clients. Perhaps $20,000? $20,000. That exceeded what I'd accumulated in the 3 years before meeting him. That represented 6 months of housing costs. That was the financial cushion I'd spent years constructing. But Marcus regarded me with such hopefulness, such faith. He said, "You're the only person I can approach. My parents would never accept funds from acquaintances. But you're family now." Family. That designation mattered to me. I'd grown up in a tight-knit family where we supported each other without hesitation. If my parents required $20,000, I would have provided it immediately, so I agreed. I transferred $20,000 from my savings to Richard's account. Marcus promised his father would reimburse us within 6 months, once business recovered. Richard sent me a text message 2 days later. "Thank you for your generosity. We won't forget this." He never reimbursed me. Instead, 4 months later, Marcus came home saying his parents required another $15,000. The heating system had failed. The roof was damaged. There were critical repairs that couldn't be postponed. I hesitated that time. I questioned whether they'd explored home equity financing. Marcus said they'd been rejected, something regarding their debt ratios. I asked if they could access Richard's retirement funds. Marcus said those were already exhausted. Please, he said. They're mortified to request help, but they're in genuine crisis. So I transferred another $15,000 and then another $10,000 3 months afterward. When Patricia required dental procedures, their insurance wouldn't cover. And then another $8,000 when Richard's vehicle broke down and he couldn't afford repairs. Across 2 years, I wired $73,000 to Marcus's parents. Never once did they thank me directly. Never once did they acknowledge the money originated from my salary, my reserves, my work. They thanked Marcus. They told him he was an exemplary son. They told him they were proud of how he cared for his family. And Marcus accepted their gratitude as though he'd earned that money himself. I began tracking our finances obsessively afterward. I created a spreadsheet documenting every expenditure: housing, utilities, food, fuel, insurance, debt payments, everything. I color-coded it. I calculated percentages. By the end of our second year together, I had funded 91% of our combined expenses. Marcus contributed his $65,000 salary to our shared account, but it vanished almost instantly. He carried student debt I'd been unaware of, $42,000 in private educational loans, with interest rates that made me ill. He had credit card balances, $18,000 distributed across 4 cards, all approaching their limits. He had a vehicle lease costing $600 monthly. After his fixed obligations, Marcus retained roughly $400 monthly in discretionary funds. I was covering housing, groceries, utilities, restaurant meals, trips, gifts for his relatives, and every emergency that surfaced. But his family didn't perceive it that way. To them, Marcus was the provider. He was the accomplished professional with the solid position and the bright future. I was the accessory, the wife who remained home excessively, the woman who didn't dress appropriately for family photographs, the outsider who couldn't grasp their sophisticated standards. Patricia made constant observations, small remarks that felt like tiny cuts. "You're wearing that to the formal event? I thought you'd lost more weight by now. Marcus really should have married someone who knew how to entertain properly." At Christmas that second year, she gave me a budget store gift basket. She gave Marcus's cousin, who worked part-time serving coffee, a $300 cashmere scarf from an upscale department store. I said nothing. I smiled and expressed gratitude for the basket. I assisted with cleanup after dinner. I performed the role of the appreciative daughter-in-law who felt fortunate to be included. But I was keeping records. I started a second spreadsheet. This one tracked every cutting comment, every dismissive observation, every moment they diminished me. I didn't know what purpose it would serve. I simply needed documentation that I wasn't inventing this, that the cruelty was genuine and persistent and deliberate. 3 years into marriage, I became pregnant. Marcus was delighted. His parents were delighted. Patricia immediately began planning the celebration, the nursery, the ceremony. She purchased expensive items without consulting me: a $2,000 crib, a $1,500 chair, an $800 changing station. She had everything delivered to our apartment. "Don't concern yourself with reimbursing me," she said. "This is what grandparents do." I didn't have the energy to explain I'd been saving months to purchase those exact items myself, that I'd researched every option, compared costs, waited for sales, that her version of generosity felt like another method of asserting authority. Our daughter, Emily, was born in May. She was flawless, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a complete head of dark hair. I took 12 weeks of partially compensated leave. Marcus took 3 days off. When I returned to work, Patricia volunteered to provide childcare twice weekly. I was grateful. Childcare in Seattle was prohibitively expensive, and having family assistance felt like a gift. But Patricia used those babysitting days to criticize my parenting. She told me I was nursing too long, that I was holding Emily excessively, that I was going to spoil her by responding every time she cried. "When Marcus was a baby, I let him cry it out," she said. "It's the only way they learn independence." Emily was 7 weeks old. I began paying for daycare 4 days weekly instead. It cost $1,800 monthly. Marcus and I had agreed we'd split it, $900 each. But his student loan payments increased that year, and he said he couldn't afford his portion. so I paid the full $2,800. And the full mortgage on the house we purchased when Emily turned 1, a 3-bedroom craftsman in Ballard requiring work but possessing solid structure. Marcus wanted to purchase it. He said it was essential for Emily to grow up in an actual house with a yard. He promised he'd handle the improvements. I paid for the improvements, $35,000 to update the kitchen, $12,000 to renovate the bathrooms, $8,000 to refinish the hardwood floors. Patricia came over the week after we relocated. She toured the house with the demeanor of an inspector reviewing code violations. She commented on the cabinet shade, too dark, the countertops, too trendy, the tile in the master bath, too modern. "This must have cost a fortune," she said. "I hope Marcus's promotion was worthwhile." Marcus hadn't received a promotion. He still earned $65,000 annually. He'd remained at that salary for 5 years. But I didn't correct her. I simply smiled and offered her coffee. That was the year Patricia began calling me a gold digger at family gatherings. Not directly to me, initially. She said it to Marcus's aunt while I was in the kitchen retrieving more wine. She said it to Richard while I was upstairs settling Emily for sleep. She said it to Marcus's brother during a cookout while I was in the restroom. People would inform me later. In that careful way people relay insults they believe you should know about. "Patricia said something peculiar about you being interested in Marcus's family wealth." I think Patricia was joking, but she called you a social climber. Richard made a comment about you marrying up. I confronted Marcus after the cookout. I asked him why his mother was telling people I married him for money. He shrugged. "She doesn't mean anything by it. That's just her humor." "It's not humor, Marcus. It's a falsehood. I earn more than you do. I've paid for nearly everything we own." "You don't need to track things like that," he said. "We're married. It's all our money." Except it wasn't, not truly. His name appeared on the property deed, but my income had funded the down payment. His name appeared on the vehicle title, but my salary covered the insurance and upkeep. His name appeared on the credit cards, but I paid the bills. When Emily turned 3, Marcus's parents required money again, another $25,000. This time it was because Richard's advisory business had finally collapsed completely and they were facing property seizure. "They'll lose the house," Marcus said. "We can't allow that to happen." I was exhausted. Exhausted from financing their lifestyle, exhausted from being insulted while I kept them afloat, exhausted from watching Marcus prioritize his parents' comfort over our financial security. But I transferred the $25,000, because what alternative did I have? Allow them to become homeless? Let Emily's grandparents lose their home while I hoarded funds out of spite? I told myself I was taking the high road. I told myself this was what family did for each other. Richard sent me a text. "Thank you for helping us during this difficult time. Marcus is lucky to have a wife who understands the importance of family. A wife who understands. Not a wife who funds. Not a wife who sacrifices. A wife who understands." As if my contribution was emotional support rather than tens of thousands of dollars. That $25,000 rescued their house. They refinanced the mortgage at a reduced rate, retained their home, and avoided seizure. 2 months later, Patricia told a room full of people at Emily's 4th birthday party that I was one of those women who marries for financial security. I was standing right there, holding a tray of cupcakes I'd baked at midnight because Patricia had criticized the grocery store cake I'd originally planned to purchase. Marcus was standing beside me. He laughed. He looked at his mother and said, "Mom, come on," in the tone you use when someone tells an inappropriate joke at Thanksgiving. But he didn't say, "That's not accurate." He didn't say, "Actually, my wife has been keeping your house out of foreclosure." He didn't say anything that mattered. That was the moment something broke inside me. Not dramatically, not with tears or confrontation, just a quiet internal fracture, like a hairline crack spreading across glass. I realized Marcus would never defend me, that his family would never acknowledge what I'd done for them, that I could fund their entire existence and still be branded a parasite. So I stopped trying to prove myself to them. I didn't stop paying for things. I couldn't, not without destroying the life I'd built for Emily. But I stopped expecting gratitude. I stopped hoping for recognition. I stopped caring what Patricia thought of my clothes or my career or my parenting. I started documenting everything more rigorously instead. Every wire transfer got logged with date, amount, and stated purpose. Every loan request got documented in email. Every family gathering where someone insulted me got noted with witnesses present. I wasn't planning a divorce yet. I was just protecting myself, building a record in case I ever needed one. I needed it sooner than I expected. When Emily turned 6, we had a second daughter, Sophie. The pregnancy was difficult. I developed complications that required bed rest for the final trimester. I couldn't work full-time. My income dropped temporarily to partial disability payments. Marcus's response was to suggest I quit my job entirely. "We can manage on my salary," he said. "It'll be tight, but Emily and Sophie need you home." I ran the numbers. His salary, after his fixed expenses, left roughly $1,200 monthly for groceries, utilities, gas, children's expenses, and emergencies. We couldn't survive on that. We'd lose the house within 4 months. I told him this, showed him the spreadsheet. He got defensive. "You're always tracking money. It's exhausting. Can't we just trust that things will work out?" "Trust doesn't pay the mortgage, Marcus. My parents managed to raise me without my mom working." I stared at him. "Your parents are $180,000 in debt to me. That's how they managed." He went silent. Then he said, "You're holding that over us?" "Us, not them. Us," as if he and his parents were a unit, and I was the external force threatening them. I returned to work 6 weeks after Sophie was born. I pumped breast milk in a storage closet during lunch breaks. I paid for full-time daycare for 2 children, $200 monthly. I added a night nanny twice a week because I was too exhausted to function, another $800 monthly. Patricia told people I was a neglectful mother who prioritized career over children. The same woman whose house I'd saved, the same woman whose dental work I'd funded, the same woman who'd never once offered to babysit her second granddaughter. I stopped attending family gatherings after that. I told Marcus I had work commitments or the girls were sick or I was too tired. He went alone, and I didn't care what they said about me in my absence. I was too busy keeping us financially afloat to worry about their opinions. The breaking point came 2 years ago. Emily was 8, Sophie was 2. Marcus's father had a heart attack. He survived, but the medical bills were catastrophic. Apparently, his insurance had lapsed months earlier, another detail Richard had concealed. Marcus came to me and said his parents needed $50,000. $50,000. I said no. For the first time in our entire marriage, I said no. "We don't have it," I said. "We can take it from the home equity line. That's our emergency fund, for our children." "My father could die, Ava. And if you drain our emergency fund and I lose my job, our children could lose their home." He looked at me like I was a stranger. "When did you become so cold?" Cold. Because I refused to destroy my daughter's security to rescue his parents from consequences of their own financial mismanagement. "I've given them $180,000 over 10 years, I said. "I'm not giving them any more." Marcus appealed to me for days. He cried. He accused me of lacking compassion. He suggested I'd never truly accepted his family. I didn't budge. So he took out a personal loan, $50,000 at 12% interest, and wired it to his parents without telling me. I discovered it when I reviewed our credit report 3 months later. The loan was in both our names. Marcus had forged my signature on the application. That was when I consulted a divorce attorney. Not because of the money itself, though $50,000 in undisclosed debt was catastrophic, because he'd committed fraud using my identity, because he'd prioritized his parents over our children's welfare, because after 10 years of funding his family's lifestyle while they called me a gold digger, he'd stolen from me to give them even more. The attorney recommended a forensic accountant before filing. If he's been this financially irresponsible, we need documentation. Otherwise, he'll claim everything was mutual decision-making and you'll end up liable for half his hidden debts. The forensic accountant took 4 months to compile the report, 147 pages. Every transaction traced, every wire transfer documented, every loan tracked from origin to use. The findings were staggering. Over 12 years of marriage, I had earned $847,000. Marcus had earned $83,000. I had contributed $1,653,000 to household expenses, joint purchases, his parents' bailouts, and our children's needs. Marcus had contributed $127,000. He had $183,000 in undisclosed debt I knew nothing about. Student loans, credit cards, personal loans, all in both our names without my knowledge. I had $238,000 in retirement savings that I'd protected by maintaining separate accounts. The house we lived in, the house Marcus's name appeared on, had been purchased with $120,000 down payment entirely from my savings. The mortgage had been paid 94% by my income. The 2 cars we drove, both titled in Marcus's name, had been purchased and maintained entirely with my funds. Our daughter's college funds, $87,000 total, had been contributed to exclusively by me, and the $80,000 I'd wired to Marcus's parents over the years. The forensic accountant traced where it went. $73,000 had paid credit card debt for luxury purchases, country club dues, designer clothing, vacation properties they'd rented and couldn't afford. $54,000 had paid the mortgage on their home, which they'd refinanced repeatedly to extract equity for spending. $31,000 had paid for Richard's car leases and Patricia's jewelry purchases. $22,000 had paid for medical procedures that were elective, not emergency. $0 had been repaid. The forensic accountant included a final analysis. Subject's family extracted $180,000 from marital assets contributed solely by client, while simultaneously disparaging client as financially motivated. This pattern is consistent with financial exploitation, combined with reputation destruction to prevent victim from seeking restitution. I filed for divorce 3 days after receiving the report. Marcus was served papers at his office. He called me immediately, hysterical. "You can't do this. What about the girls? What about our family?" "I am protecting our girls," I said, "from growing up watching their mother be exploited." "Exploited? I've given you everything." "Marcus, you've given me nothing. I've given you everything. There's a difference." He hired an attorney, using money he borrowed from his parents, I later learned. His legal strategy was to claim the house, the cars, and half my retirement savings. To argue that as the primary caregiver, he wasn't, he deserved alimony and child support. To paint me as the high-earning spouse who'd financially abandoned the family. My attorney's strategy was simpler: present the forensic accounting report. We went to mediation 4 months ago. Marcus, his attorney, my attorney, a mediator, and me in a conference room downtown. Marcus's attorney opened by demanding I pay Marcus $4,000 monthly in spousal support and relinquish the house. My attorney slid the forensic report across the table. "Please review pages 23 through 45, she said. "Those detail my client's contributions to marital assets versus your client's extractions." Marcus's attorney read for 11 minutes in complete silence. Then he read pages 67 through 89, which detailed the forged loan application. Then he read pages 112 through 131, which detailed every wire transfer to Marcus's parents and its ultimate use. He set the report down and looked at Marcus. "You forged her signature on a $50,000 loan application?" Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "My father was dying," he said. "Your father was not dying," my attorney said. "He had a heart attack, received treatment, and recovered. The $50,000 paid off his credit card debt from a vacation property rental in Maui. That's not..." "It's documented in the report. Bank statements from your parents' accounts, which they provided during discovery, show a $47,000 payment to Capital One, 3 days after receiving your wire transfer." Marcus went silent. His attorney asked for a recess. 20 minutes later, he returned and said Marcus was withdrawing all financial claims except for standard shared custody. "My client will accept an equal division of the home equity, relinquish claims to your retirement accounts, and waive spousal support. In exchange, you'll assume sole responsibility for the debts incurred in both your names." "No," I said. Everyone stared at me. "I want full documentation of every debt Marcus incurred using my name, and I want it removed from my credit report. I want him to refinance the house in his name only and buy out my equity at current market value, or we sell it and split the proceeds after my down payment is reimbursed in full. And I want a written confession that he forged my signature on the $50,000 loan submitted to the credit agencies to clear my name." "That's..." Marcus's attorney started. "Those are my terms. Otherwise, we go to trial and I pursue criminal charges for identity theft and fraud. We settled 3 weeks later. Marcus signed everything. I walked away with $284,000 from the house sale after my down payment was reimbursed. I kept my retirement accounts. I got primary custody of Emily and Sophie. Marcus gets them every other weekend and Wednesday dinners, which is more access than he'd shown interest in during the marriage. The debts in my name were removed from my credit report with documentation of fraud. Marcus assumed full responsibility for them. I bought a smaller house in Greenwood. 3 bedrooms, no yard, but it's mine. Fully mine. Paid in cash, so I owe nobody anything. The girls adjusted faster than I expected. Emily told me, 2 months after the move, that she liked our new house better because it feels calmer. Sophie just wanted to know if we could get a dog now. We did. A rescue mutt named Biscuit who sleeps in Sophie's room. But I haven't told you the best part yet. 2 weeks after the divorce finalized, I received a phone call from Patricia. She'd heard about the settlement. Apparently, Marcus had finally told his parents that he'd lost the house, lost his claim to my retirement funds, and was drowning in debt. Patricia's voice on the phone was syrupy with false concern. "Ava, darling, I know things ended badly between you and Marcus, but I wanted to reach out because I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding about our family dynamics." I didn't respond. I just waited. You see, Marcus mentioned something about a financial report during your divorce proceedings, and I'm concerned there may have been some accounting errors. The money you lent us over the years, we always intended to repay that. We simply haven't been in a position to do so yet. "You've had 12 years, I said. "Well, yes, but circumstances have been difficult. Richard's business never fully recovered, as you know. We've been living quite modestly. I thought of the Cartier jewelry, the country club membership, the Maui vacation rental. Patricia," I said, "I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear me clearly." "Of course, dear." "You called me a parasite at my engagement party. You called me a gold digger at family gatherings for 12 years. You told people I married Marcus for money. You criticized my career, my parenting, my clothes, my hosting abilities. You made me feel small and inadequate and unwelcome every single time I was in your presence." Silence. "And during all that time," I continued, "I was paying your mortgage. I was covering your credit card debt. I was funding your lifestyle while you called me a freeloader. Do you understand how that works? You were living off my income while accusing me of living off your son's." We didn't realize." "You didn't realize because you never asked. You assumed Marcus was supporting me when the reality was the opposite. And now that you know the truth, you're calling to ask for more understanding, more patience, more money eventually, I'm sure." "That's not—" "I'm done, Patricia. I don't want an apology. I don't want a relationship. I don't want you in my life or my daughter's lives. You've shown me exactly who you are for 12 years. I believe you. You can't keep Emily and Sophie from their grandparents." "I'm not keeping them from you. They're welcome to visit you during Marcus's custody time. But you'll never be in my home again. You'll never attend their school events or birthday parties that I host. You'll never have my phone number or my address. As far as I'm concerned, you're Marcus's family, not mine. Not anymore." I hung up before she could respond. She tried calling back 17 times that day. I blocked her number. She sent a letter to my old address. Marcus forwarded it, probably hoping I'd feel guilty. The letter was 4 pages of how hurt she was, how she'd always loved me like a daughter, how I was being vindictive and cruel. Not one sentence acknowledged what she'd done. Not one word apologized for the 12 years of insults. Not one admission that she'd been wrong. I burned the letter in my fireplace while the girls were at school. Marcus tried one last time to change my mind about his parents. He showed up at my house 3 months ago unannounced during his non-custody week. "The girls miss their grandparents," he said. "The girls miss the idea of grandparents," I said. "They don't miss Patricia criticizing their clothes or Richard falling asleep during their school concerts. They're old, they're lonely. They're reaping what they planted. You've always been cold about my family." I looked at him, this man I'd spent 12 years funding, defending, protecting from consequences. "I gave your family $180,000, Marcus. I gave them 12 years of my life and my labor. I gave them patience and grace and second chances. What I didn't give them was permission to abuse me while I did it. And the fact that you still can't see the difference tells me everything I need to know about why our marriage failed. He left. He hasn't brought it up since. Emily is 10 now, Sophie is 4. We're building a life that doesn't include people who take without gratitude or give only criticism. Last week, Emily came home from school and told me about a career day presentation. A classmate's mother had talked about being a financial advisor. Emily was fascinated. "Mom," she said, "can you teach me about money? Like, how you know what to save and what to spend and how to keep track of everything." I thought of the spreadsheets, the documentation, the 12 years of tracking every dollar because nobody else would. "Yes," I said, "I can teach you that." "Good," Emily said, "because I never want someone to lie about me the way Daddy's family lied about you." She'd been listening. She'd been understanding more than I realized. "Baby," I said, "the most important thing I can teach you is this. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. And when someone tries to make you small so they can feel big, walk away. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because they're family." She nodded, serious beyond her years. "Did you walk away?" she asked. "Eventually," I said. "I wish I'd done it sooner." "But you did it," she said. "That's what matters." She's right. I spent 12 years being called a gold digger while I funded their gold. I don't need their apology anymore. I already know I was right. The forensic report sits in a fireproof safe in my office. I haven't looked at it in months. I don't need to. I know what it says. I know what I contributed. I know what I'm worth. The people who called me a gold digger weren't just wrong, they were projecting. They were the ones extracting value from me for 12 years while telling everyone I was the thief. But I have the receipts, 147 pages of them, and that knowledge is worth more than any apology they'll never give. I've started telling my daughters about compound interest. Not in some abstract way, I show them the numbers. How $100 invested at age 20 becomes $1,269 at age 60 with a 7% return. How starting early matters more than starting big. Sophie doesn't understand yet. She just likes playing with the calculator. But Emily gets it. Last month, she asked if I could help her open a savings account. She wants to put half her birthday money in it every year. "Why half?" I asked. "Because the other half is for now," she said. "But the savings half is for future me. And future me deserves to have options." I taught her that language. Future me deserves options. It's what I tell myself every time I'm tempted to dip into my emergency fund for something that isn't an emergency. Marcus's family never thought about future them. They only thought about right now them. Right now, we need a new roof. Right now, we want to renovate. Right now, there's a medical bill. And every time I said we should plan for this or let's build a buffer first, I became the villain standing between them and their immediate gratification. That's what financial abuse looks like when it's subtle. It's not just stealing money. It's making you feel guilty for wanting to keep it, for wanting to plan, for suggesting that maybe we don't need the most expensive version of everything. Right this second. I think about the therapist I saw during the divorce. Dr. Chen. She was the one who first used the term financial abuse in session. I'd laughed. Not because it was funny, because it sounded too dramatic, too clinical. "Abuse is hitting," I'd said. "Abuse is screaming. What they did was just taking advantage." "Taking advantage without consent is a form of abuse," Dr. Chen said. "You didn't agree to fund their lifestyle. You agreed to help with a roof. Then it became a pattern. Then it became expected. Then you became the bad guy for trying to stop." She was right, and the gold digger accusation was the final move in a 12-year game. Make me the villain retroactively. Rewrite the history so none of them have to feel guilty about what they took. I wonder sometimes if they actually believe it now. If they've told the story so many times that they've convinced themselves it's true. That I married Marcus for money that didn't exist. That I manipulated my way into a middle-class family and somehow struck gold. The cognitive dissonance required to believe that version of events is staggering. But people believe what they need to believe to protect their self-image. I don't hate them. I really don't. That would require me to still be emotionally invested in their opinion of me. What I feel is closer to pity. They burned a bridge to someone who genuinely wanted to help them, someone who showed up with spreadsheets and patience and a genuine belief that we could build something better together. And in return, they got, what? The satisfaction of calling me names behind my back? The temporary relief of not having to acknowledge their own financial dysfunction? They're still struggling, as far as I know. Marcus mentioned once that his parents were considering selling the house. The one with the $30,000 roof I helped pay for. The one they refinanced 3 times to pull out equity they spent on things they can't remember. I didn't ask for details. It's not my problem anymore. My problem is making sure Emily and Sophie grow up understanding that love and money can coexist without shame. That it's okay to have boundaries. That generosity without reciprocity isn't generosity. It's depletion. Emily asked me recently if I regret marrying her dad. I told her the truth. I regret staying as long as I did. But I don't regret you and Sophie. You two are the best things that ever happened to me. Even though it cost $180,000, she asked. I laughed. Because here's what the forensic report didn't capture. The 12 years weren't just money out. They were also lessons in, lessons about red flags, about boundaries, about the difference between helping and enabling. I'm teaching those lessons to my daughters now. And someday, when they're adults with their own money and their own boundaries, they'll remember that their mom didn't just survive being called a gold digger while funding someone else's gold. They'll remember she documented everything, proved herself right, walked away with her head high, and taught them to do the same. The forensic report sits in the safe. I don't need to look at it anymore. I already know what I'm worth, and I know what I taught them to never tolerate. Marcus hasn't spoken to his parents in 18 months. His choice, not mine. I never demanded he cut them off. I just stopped pretending their behavior was acceptable. Stopped attending the holiday dinners where Diane would make passive-aggressive comments about certain people who thinks they're too good for family. Stopped answering Carol's texts asking for loans that were really gifts disguised as emergencies. When Marcus finally confronted them, calm, factual, armed with that same forensic report, they did exactly what I expected. They accused him of being brainwashed, of choosing money over family, of abandoning them in their time of need. What time of need? He asked his mother. The one where Sarah paid for your roof? Or the one where she covered Dad's medical bills? Or maybe the one where she funded your kitchen remodel while you told everyone she was using me? Diane hung up. She hasn't called back. His father sent one email. 3 paragraphs of self-justification ending with, "We may not have handled everything perfectly, but we raised you. That should count for something." Marcus wrote back 4 words. It counted for $180. Then he blocked them both. I didn't celebrate. There's nothing to celebrate about a family implosion. But I didn't mourn either, because what died wasn't a healthy relationship. It was the pretense that one existed. The girls ask about their grandparents sometimes. We don't lie to them. We explain that Grandma and Grandpa made choices that hurt people, and when they were given a chance to acknowledge that hurt, they chose defensiveness instead. We tell them that sometimes loving someone from a distance is the only safe way to love them. Emily, at 14, gets it. Sophie, at 12, is still processing. But they both understand this. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because they're related to you. The business is thriving. Marcus took that energy he used to spend managing his parents' crises and poured it into expansion. We opened a second location last year, hired 6 new employees, bought a building instead of leasing. When the bank reviewed our financials for the commercial mortgage, the loan officer commented on how clean our books were. No irregular withdrawals, no unexplained transfers. You'd be surprised how rare that is. I didn't tell her that those clean books were only 2 years old, that before that they looked like a crime scene. I just smiled and signed the paperwork. Carol reached out once, about 6 months ago, not to apologize, to ask if we'd co-sign a loan. She and Richard were in a tight spot, and our strong credit would really help them out. She framed it as a family favor, a small thing, no big deal. I read the message 3 times, searching for any hint of self-awareness, any acknowledgement of the irony. Found none. I didn't respond. Marcus didn't respond. We both just stared at our phones for a moment, then went back to dinner. 2 weeks later, she sent a follow-up. This one was angrier, accused us of being selfish, of forgetting where we came from, of thinking we were better than everyone else now that we had a little success. A little success. As if we hadn't built this from nothing. As if Marcus hadn't worked 70-hour weeks while his mother critiqued his wife's clothes. as if I hadn't funded their entire lifestyle while being called a leech. I blocked her number. Marcus did the same. We haven't heard from them since. Sometimes I wonder if they ever think about that forensic report. If they ever do the math themselves. If they ever lie awake at night realizing that the person they spent 12 years demonizing was the only thing keeping them afloat. Probably not. People like that don't do introspection. They do revision. They're probably still telling people I married Marcus for money, still painting themselves as victims of my social climbing, still completely unaware that I documented every dollar they took while calling me worthless. The girls know the truth. Our friends know the truth. Our business partners know the truth. And honestly, that's enough. I don't need vindication from people who'll never admit they were wrong. I don't need apologies from people who don't believe they owe any. I got something better than their acknowledgement. I got evidence, I got boundaries, I got the hell out. And I got to teach my daughters that the people who call you a gold digger while draining your accounts are always projecting their own relationship to money onto you. That forensic report cost me $3,500, best money I ever spent. Because it wasn't just documentation. It was closure. It was proof that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining the exploitation, that I had every right to walk away and never look back. I hope Diane and Carol are happy in their revised narrative. I hope they've convinced themselves that I was the problem. I hope they sleep soundly believing they did nothing wrong. Because that delusion is the only relationship they have left with their son. Marcus sees them maybe twice a year now. Obligatory appearances at major holidays. An hour, maybe two, of stilted conversation where nobody mentions the elephant in the room, or the 12 elephants. The $127,000 worth of elephants that funded their lifestyle while they called his wife a parasite. He doesn't argue with them anymore. Doesn't defend me. Doesn't engage when Carol makes her little comments about women who married up. He just looks at his watch and says, "We have another commitment. We always have another commitment." The girls don't ask to see them. Sophia remembers enough. Emma absorbed the tension even if she can't articulate it. When Diane sends birthday cards with $20 bills inside, the girls say thank you out of politeness, then forget about them. There's no warmth there, no longing, just the mechanical courtesy you'd extend to a distant acquaintance. That's what Diane and Carol bought with their cruelty. Mechanical courtesy from their grandchildren, annual holiday appearances from their son, and a permanent space on my blocked contacts list. Meanwhile, I watch Marcus thrive in ways he never could when we were financing his mother's martyr complex. He's lighter, quicker to laugh, more present with the girls. The forensic report didn't just give us evidence, it gave him permission to stop trying to fix something that was designed to stay broken. Because here's what I learned about toxic family dynamics. They don't want solutions, they want supply. Diane didn't want a relationship with her son. She wanted unlimited access to his resources and unconditional validation of her victimhood narrative. The moment I threatened that supply by setting boundaries, I became the villain. And when Marcus supported those boundaries instead of sacrificing his wife to keep his mother comfortable, he became a villain too. That's the pattern. That's always the pattern. The person who sets the boundary becomes the abuser. The person who enforces consequences becomes the cruel one. The person who stops funding dysfunction becomes selfish. And people like Diane will tell that story until they believe it themselves. I used to think that if I could just show them the numbers, they'd understand. If I could lay out the evidence clearly enough, they'd have to acknowledge what they'd done. That forensic report was partially motivated by that fantasy. The idea that facts would penetrate denial. But facts don't work on people who've built entire identities around being wronged. Diane needed me to be a gold digger because it justified her resentment of my education, my career, my boundary setting. If I wasn't a gold digger, then she'd have to confront the fact that she'd spent 12 years bullying someone who'd done nothing but financially support her family while being psychologically tortured for it. That's too much cognitive dissonance, easier to just keep believing the lie. So I stopped trying to convince them of anything. Stopped imagining the apology that would never come. Stopped waiting for acknowledgement that I deserved better. I gave myself that acknowledgement instead. I looked at that forensic report and said, "You were right to protect yourself. You were right to document everything. You were right to leave." And then I moved on with my life. The business is doing well, really well. We're expanding into a second location next quarter. Sophia's talking about architecture school. Emma wants to be a marine biologist, which changes monthly, but the passion in her voice doesn't. Marcus and I just celebrated our 16th anniversary. 16 years of building something real while his family insisted I was building something fake. Our financial advisor says we'll be able to retire comfortably in our mid-50s if we want to. Not because I married rich, because we built wealth together. Because I contributed equally. Because every dollar I put in was tracked and documented and real. Sometimes people ask if I regret keeping such detailed records. If it feels cold or transactional to have cataloged every financial exchange. I tell them it's the opposite of cold. It's the warmest thing I ever did for myself. Because that documentation protected me when gaslighting tried to rewrite history. It protected my daughters from absorbing a narrative that their mother was a user. It protected my marriage from the poison of doubt. And it protected my sanity when people who'd taken everything tried to convince me I'd given nothing. That's what evidence does in toxic systems. It's a firewall against revision. So if you're reading this and you're in a relationship where someone's rewriting history, start documenting now. Not because you're planning to leave, not because you want ammunition, but because you deserve to trust your own memory when someone's trying to gaslight you into doubting it. Because one day you might need proof that you weren't crazy, that it really happened the way you remember, that your contributions were real and your boundaries were justified. The last time I spoke to Diane was 18 months ago. She called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. She was crying. Real tears this time, not the performative kind she'd weaponized at family gatherings. "Marcus won't talk to me," she said. "None of them will. I just wanted to. I thought maybe you could." I waited. Let the silence stretch. "I miss my grandchildren," she finally said. And there it was. Not an apology. Not accountability. Just consequence dressed up as victimhood. "You were invited to know them," I said quietly. "You chose to accuse their mother of fraud instead. You chose to turn every holiday into an interrogation. You chose to tell them their college funds were dirty money. Those were your choices, Diane. These are the results. I was just trying to protect my son." From what? A wife who loved him? A partner who built a business with him? A mother who documented her contributions specifically so no one could accuse her of the thing you accused her of. Anyway, her breathing changed. I'd hit something. "You made me the villain of a story that didn't need one," I continued. "And when I proved you wrong with literal forensic evidence, you just kept going. So no, I can't help you reconcile with your son. That's between you and the person you spent 12 years disrespecting in front of his children." She hung up. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, waiting to feel guilty. I didn't. What I felt was peace. The kind that comes from knowing you said exactly what needed to be said, no more and no less. No cruelty, no gloating. Just boundaries delivered in complete sentences. Marcus asked me later what she'd said. I told him. He nodded slowly. "I keep thinking she'll realize," he said. "That one day she'll actually see what she did and feel bad enough to apologize." "She might," I said. "But you can't wait for it. That's giving her power over your healing." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "When did you stop waiting?" "The day I got the forensic report back. The day I had documentation proving I was right and realized it wouldn't change anything. That's when I understood this was never about facts. It was about her needing to be right more than she needed to know the truth. The girls don't ask about their grandparents anymore. They did at first. Sophia wanted to know why Grandma Diane said mean things. Emma asked if we were poor and I was lying. We sat them down and explained in age-appropriate terms that sometimes people hurt the ones they're supposed to love. That family isn't just blood, it's behavior. That they'd always have a family who saw them and valued them, even if some relatives chose absence. Sophia's in therapy now. Preemptive boundary-setting work with a counselor who specializes in family systems. She's learning at 17 what I didn't learn until 35, that you can't logic someone into loving you correctly. That documentation isn't paranoia when someone's actively rewriting your reality. That walking away from toxicity isn't cruelty, it's clarity. She told me recently that she wants to write about her experience for a college application essay. The prompt is about overcoming adversity. She's framing it around watching her mother be gaslit, then watching her mother methodically dismantle the gaslighting. With evidence, then watching her mother choose peace over proving a point. "You taught me that self-defense can look like a spreadsheet," she said. I cried. The good kind. The kind that means you've passed down something useful instead of just trauma. The business expansion is happening next month. We're opening in the next town over, same model, broader market. Our accountant pulled me aside last week to show me the projections. If we maintain current growth, we'll clear 7 figures in annual revenue within 3 years. "You've built something remarkable," he said. "Both of you. Both of us. 50-50. Documented. Proven. Real." I thought about Diane, alone in whatever narrative she's constructed now. Still telling people I married for money, probably. Still believing her own revision. Still waiting for her son to apologize for choosing his wife over his mother's delusion. And I felt something I didn't expect. Pity. Not the condescending kind, the genuine kind. Because she's missing all of this. The expansion, the grandchildren's achievements, the quiet Tuesday nights when Marcus and I cook dinner together and talk about retirement plans. The family we built on mutual respect instead of obligation. She could have had this. All she had to do was believe me. Or better yet, get to know me well enough that belief was automatic. Instead, she chose the comfort of her assumptions, the safety of her prejudice, the familiarity of her control. And now she's inheriting the consequences of that choice, a life where she's technically correct in her own mind, but factually alone in reality. Marcus saw his mother exactly once after that dinner. She showed up at his office 6 months later, unannounced, demanding to speak with him. His assistant buzzed him. He stepped into the lobby rather than let her into his workspace. She didn't apologize. She explained at length that she'd been misunderstood, that her concerns about me came from a place of maternal protection, that she'd only ever wanted what was best for him, and couldn't he see that her methods, while perhaps poorly articulated, were rooted in love? He let her finish. Then he said 4 sentences. "You accused my wife of fraud. You refused evidence that disproved your accusation. You traumatized my daughters with your investigation. We're done." She tried to hug him. He stepped back. She called him cruel. He left. He came home that night and sat in the driveway for 20 minutes before coming inside. I found him staring at nothing, processing. When I asked if he was okay, he said, "I keep waiting to feel guilty. I don't, I just feel tired." That was 2 years ago. She's reached out sporadically since. Emails around holidays, texts on his birthday, a certified letter last Christmas that contained a check for $5,000 made out to Marcus and family. Not my name. Just family. As if I'm still the interchangeable wife-shaped accessory in her narrative. We shredded the check, documented the attempt for our records, moved on. Here's what I've learned about vindication. It's not a single moment. It's not the spreadsheet revelation or the bank statements or the lawyer's confirmation. Those are just evidence. Vindication is the life you build in the aftermath when the people who doubted you are no longer invited to witness your success. It's Sophia getting early acceptance to her top choice university with a scholarship that covers 70% of tuition. It's Emma making the varsity soccer team as a freshman and asking me to braid her hair before every game the way her father used to braid mine when we were dating. It's Marcus and I sitting in our accountant's office, signing partnership papers for the expansion, and realizing we've built something his mother said was impossible. A marriage where assets don't equal power, where contribution isn't transactional, where 50-50 means trust. It's me running into one of Diane's book club friends at the grocery store last month. She recognized me, got flustered, started to walk away, then stopped, turned back. "I owe you an apology," she said. "We all do. Diane told us things that weren't true. I believed her because she's persuasive and I was lazy. I'm sorry." I thanked her. I didn't elaborate. I didn't list the damage or recite the evidence. I just said, "I appreciate you saying that," and continued shopping. Because here's the thing about being right. You don't have to keep proving it. The truth just keeps being true, whether or not anyone's watching. The business expansion opens in 3 weeks. We're hosting a small launch event. Clients, vendors, the team we've built over the years. Not a spectacle. Just a celebration of work that speaks for itself. Marcus asked if I wanted to send his mother an invitation. Not to reconcile, just to let her see what we've built. Proof, one more time, that her narrative was fiction. I said no, not because I'm angry anymore. I'm not. I'm just done performing for an audience that's already decided what they want to see. She can believe whatever she needs to believe. I've got a business to run, daughters to raise, a partnership to nurture. I've got a life where my bank statements match my tax returns, where my marriage has paperwork to prove its integrity, where my children are learning that love doesn't require you to tolerate cruelty. She can keep her version of events. I'll keep mine. And 20 years from now, when Sophia and Emma are building their own lives, they'll remember this, that their mother didn't crumble under scrutiny, that she gathered evidence, that she set boundaries, that she walked away from people who demanded she shrink to fit their story. That's the inheritance I'm leaving them. Not money, not property. The knowledge that you don't owe anyone access to your peace just because they're related to you. That documentation isn't vindictive. It's survival. That the people who love you correctly won't require proof. And if they do require proof, you hand it over once, calmly, completely. Then you let the silence do the rest.